I think the difference between a domestic and a commercial ICR is the fact that you live in one property and you work in another. So both are equally as important, because you probably spend just as much time as you do at work as you do at home. So electrically, it still needs to be on point, simply because, again, we don't want fires, we don't want life being taken. We want to make sure, especially in the commercial industry, that your employees are going home safe. So I think that's the difference between domestic and commercial EICR, the fact that one's a property that you live in, one's a property that you probably work in. A commercial EICR is probably even more important in some aspects because we're working with bigger current. You know, you think about a single phase supply in most domestic properties, we're talking about 3-phase supply in most commercial properties. So there's a lot more to test, a lot more that could potentially go wrong. So yeah, it's massively important that we test these commercial properties. Yeah, any ICR is massively part of a compliance company, compliance of a building. Again, for insurance purposes, they're huge. These things are targeted more, maybe because the property isn't owned by the business, it might be owned by a landlord. Again, for the rental side of that, it's got to stay compliant. So that's, I suppose you would look at the health and safety. You didn't get your health and safety in your house, where obviously on a commercial EICR, as a commercial business, you're going to have to stick with health and safety regulations. And in EICR, electrical safety is a huge part of that. So if we don't stay compliant, or you don't have these things checked, there's bound to be repercussions for these things not carried out. Not only with insurance, but with compliance. Again, it's important, not just for you as a business owner, but for your employees that work for you. You want to make sure they're going home safe. You want to make sure they're coming to work and they're going to be safe. So that's where the compliance comes in, and making sure you've had these things checked to make sure everything's safe. Even if it's a brand new property, get it checked. The reason you come with stated facilities is basically we're an NIC approved contractor with numerous insurances, numerous accreditation, fully qualified members of staff, a big team, so we can do things convenient for you. We do this on a regular basis. We're full of experience. If you didn't carry out any ICR, you could probably get a phone call from the insurance company first and foremost. But ultimately, we need to check the condition of your electrics. It's something, again, we can't walk into a property and just know that everything's fine. We can't see what's behind walls, above ceilings, under floors. We have to check these things, and to stay compliant. Consequences to not carrying out EICR, and there is a fault about to be present or is present, ultimately it can result in the end of your business, or a massive financial burden to your business, or an emotional burden to friends and family. We have certain devices in place within distribution boards or consumer units that are called RCDs. RCDs will trip under an earth fault condition. MCBs, again, are present in these fuse boards and distribution boards that will present themselves in a short circuit condition. So there are certain things that can help identify a fault, but not one that will necessarily stop the fault from happening. There's certain warning signs, such as like you could probably smell electrical faults, in terms of like electrical fire, sparks, but normally it would come down to your RCD or your MCB tripping in that instance. So lights going out, sockets going off. So normally if you have a fault on site, you'd call your local electrician or local electrical company, and we'd come out to site and we'd try and rectify the fault, or at least identify the fault, which would obviously save you productivity and a financial burden. Yeah. An EICR could potentially save you money simply by having your electrics checked. Why wait for the fault when we could identify a fault before it happens? If you didn't carry out any ICR, the worst thing imaginable would somebody losing business, property, or life. Yeah, I think if you didn't carry out any ICR and there was a fault, you think about the hundreds of thousands that could cause in damage. So I think it's so important that we get any ICR carried out to stop this financial burden to yourself, or at least to check there won't be a financial burden to yourself. EICR is always going to be down to a business owner, a CEO, a chief executive, it's got to, yeah, down to the operations side, maintenance, HR would certainly get involved. That is for sure. I think everybody at a workplace has a responsibility to health and safety. So I think if somebody notices something wrong, they should raise that and ultimately have a word with a superior member of staff who's probably going to be in charge of making that decision to book an EICR in. Or the thing is, we shouldn't be in a position where we should be thinking about booking it in. It should be a standard process. It should be booked in on the not on a regular, but when it's due, on every single distribution board and everybody's certification that you get. Booking with stated facilities for an EICR or for any other works is so easy. We have a convenient booking system online where you can pay online, book online without even having to lift a phone. Booking with stated facilities is so easy. We have a convenient booking system where you can book online without even having to lift the phone.